Jared, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean.
I'm excited to have our conversation today. Something that has interested me for a number of years and yourself even longer is the study of positive psychology. So I'm really looking forward to how you think about positive psychology and its application to the financial planning process. I've been thinking a lot about this and I have many questions, but before that, I have a question that is sparked by my curiosity, and it centers around the significance of names. Names play a big part in our world. They offer a sense of identity, offering a deeper meaning usually. They often tell a story that might not be apparent at first. So to begin, I thought we would start with if you could share with us the significance, if any at all, the name Voltron plays in your life.
Okay, so many have asked where we got the name Quintessence Wealth from, and that is okay. Now I know where you got it. That is on my LinkedIn. It's a bit of a mystery. So some people asked, one of our partners in particular, they said their client asked, "Is somebody a Voltron fan?" Because this is what, unbeknownst to me, because I think I watched Voltron as a kid once or twice, but I wouldn't consider myself a fan. So what I did not know is the company's name is Quintessence Wealth. That's the full legal name. We call ourselves Q Wealth Partners, but apparently quintessence in Voltron is this substance that's the essence of life. And so and it's also a power source. So they're always trying to get more quintessence. And so they thought maybe that was the inspiration for the name, but it turns out of the 6 options, that was not the original inspiration.
And perhaps can you share what the options were, and are you able to spill the beans what what it was?
I think, okay, so and all of these have some significance, right? So the Voltron probably the least. There's a bottle of Quintessence Grand Marnier, which I have not tried. It's $1,000 though, so I'm sure it's pretty good. There's a picture of Q from Star Trek, Q from James Bond, the Quintessence Hotel in Quebec. I think it's out in Mont Tremblant. And then there's Qzar laser tag. And it's one of those 6. And anyone who's set foot in my office, you can't really see it from this angle, probably has some idea which one it is.
Okay. Well, I guess to find this answer, we got to get to your office.
You got to come visit.
Yeah. Okay.
We got to get you to Toronto sometime.
And I say that, but names do have a big meaning, and like I opened up with, they have a large significance, and so do logos and symbols. When I was preparing for today, I came across the meaning behind your company, Q Wealth's logo. I was wondering if you could touch on what the 3 waves are, what the significance of those 3 waves are, and what reference do each of those W's play?
Oh wow, yeah, you really did your homework. So yeah, I tend to put a lot, probably over engineer the logos of every company I create. So the Q Wealth logo has it's a Q and a W, right? And the 3 waves in the W stand for wealth, wellness, and well-being, and probably not necessarily in that order.
I was about to ask you, is the order intentional? But no.
No, it just flows. It just flows like
it just
that.
flows. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was curious, when you have wellness and well-being, wealth makes sense, but where was your thinking at to add well-being and wellness?
Well, that's where I think the positive psychology crossover starts to come in. So this was, I mean, it goes back years. The Q Wealth logo goes back to around about 2018. We changed the name of the company from the original name to Q Wealth or Quintessence Wealth, so we could kind of start this next chapter. But the positive psychology crossover goes back to 2011 was when I started going down the rabbit hole. So that was very intentional, with the idea being that wealth is what we as an industry tend to focus on. We do wealth management, which people take to mean, investments, minimizing taxes, estate planning, maybe it's philanthropy, right? But like if you look at a typical advisor website, they're not actually talking about well-being. They're not talking about mental health, relationships, life satisfaction. And so that breaks down into mental and physical factors, right? So health is important. You sometimes do see, this wealth health crossover, right? So that, that trifecta is really what you need to live a good life. And so we put them all in the logo.
I feel like when I first met you and you started talking about how you're combining these more well-being components into the financial planning process, it really attracted me to your way of thinking. 2011, I can't imagine there were many other, not that we're comparing, I'm just I don't think there were many other firms in the financial space in Canada, the United States, bridging this positive psychology field of study or well-being. What was it in your journey at that point in time that this positive psychology field spoke to you enough to really start putting it into your professional work?
I remember the day I was going doing a weekend trip with my wife, and we're going up to Blue Mountain here in Ontario, and I realized I forgot to bring a book for the pool. This was before I had kids, when I actually had time to read books, and so I stopped into in Barrie. We stop into the mall there, and I go to a bookstore, and there's this orange book that's faced out. It's The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acker, and I'm like, I have a look at the back, and I'm like, this sounds like an interesting read. So I pick it up, and as I'm reading the book, I hit chapter 2, and I realize I've seen this guy before. This is right out of a TED Talk that I've seen. And it turns out it's actually one of the more popular TED Talks. It's the one about like why, reaching goals doesn't make us happy. And it was sort of like a bit of an aha. I mean, this was like the early days. I'm not going to say no one was doing goals-based investing then, but like today, like, every billboard for a bank says like, let us help you reach your goals. It was but at the time I was thinking like, okay, this clearly has applicability for what we do, right? Because like, what is the point of having more money? What is the point of making wealth last? We got to use it for something. Like, you're only on the earth for so much time, right? And this whole industry seemed backwards to me. Like, I'm an outsider in this business. I was trying to get out for the longest time, and then we kind of flipped the paradigm here at Q Wealth, and made something that I'm personally very passionate about. So I wanted to stay, but it took that, like, how do we really shake it up? I mean, it was a few things, right? And everything starts in the U.S. first. This is much bigger. And you and I have been to the conferences. When you go to the US, there's a whole community of people doing this now. But back in 2011, there was no one. And actually, I remember going, and I dragged my business partner and a couple other people down to Orlando, because I went down the rabbit hole, man. I started reading all the books. The Sean Acker book led me to Martin Seligman, and Martin Seligman is the key that unlocks the whole thing, because he is the godfather, as you know, of positive psychology. So okay, there's this positive International Association of Positive Psychology, IPA. They have these world congresses, and sometimes they're far away, and sometimes they're right in their backyard. And the next one was in Orlando. So I'm like, well, we got to go to this conference. This is like the next big thing that we need to do. And we go to the conference, and I'm hoping to find, other people in wealth management or practitioners that are applying positive psychology to wealth management, but there was nobody. Not in 2015, at least.
Mm-hmm. You said so many interesting things there. I want to go back to, you said you were outsider to this industry. You were trying to get out, but then something made you passionate. I've heard you talk about before, and where I'm linking this is that I understand you have a history of pursuing jobs, projects, not necessarily for just the potential return, the money, which for many of us, that's a difficult thing, as there's this lure to money. There's this attraction that we associate money, sometimes for good reason. And then other times we recognize like, maybe that promise that the story we told ourselves about money isn't necessarily true. Nonetheless, it seems that you have this ability to select work and pursue projects that are meaningful for you. Can you just basically speak to that ability, to use your words, is you wanted to make something that you're passionate about and shake it up, as opposed to, again, just following the dollars?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a pretty good business to be in. And the truth is, my father didn't start out in this industry. He actually became a financial advisor at the age of 40. So for him, that was really starting again, and it kind of reset. Talk about money story, kind of reset everything for our family, kind of starting from the beginning. But eventually was able to build a successful practice, and I learned all about the business from him. Uh, and and as much as I understand markets, I was doing technical analysis screens for him when I was 13 to make a few extra bucks. And it was fun, right? Like it's, finding hidden patterns in the market data and that kind of thing. Is the very early days for using computers for that. And like I enjoyed it, but it wasn't really my thing. And then, I got out of university, and just having kind of popped into my dad's office a few times, I met a bunch of the other advisors there. It was actually the biggest Merrill Lynch branch in Canada at the time. And guys were just asking for help. Like, you know what it was? They figured out I knew how to fix the printer. And, and it just spiraled from there. And the next thing I know, I've got a CRM consulting company. I'm setting up CRM systems. I'm networking, computers. I'm setting up Act. I'm creating, team workflows. And then it's like, well, hey, can you help us build the team? Like, how do we get the right people doing the right things, the right seats on the bus, kind of thing. And I'm doing that, and I'm doing marketing strategies, and I'm doing UMA reporting and manager search and selection. Okay, this is really interesting. I'm learning lots of new stuff, but I kind of felt like there's something wrong here. Like, this is all for what, right? There's a lot of interesting challenges to solve, but at the end of the day, there seemed to me to be a lack of willingness on the part of advisors to be entrepreneurs, to think about, like, how can we shake this up? How can we reinvent this industry? How can we bring something new and novel and more valuable to clients than just what we were doing last decade? And I thought, if advisors aren't willing to do that, then with everything that's happening with, at the time, on being able to trade online was like a relatively new thing. And there was talk about, well, are we going to need human advisors when people can just go on an online brokerage and buy a stock? You now don't need to call your guy and be like, I want to buy some IBM, right? What's the next trick for advisors? And I was helping them, convert to fee based and build ensemble teams. But I'm like, this just advisors are not getting it. So, like, I don't want to take over my father's book of business, and I don't think there's a bright future for the human advisor. I think it's the sun is setting slowly on this thing, and I want out of this business because I don't actually love the stock market myself. So I got out, and I started a safety equipment company to help people prepare for disasters. And this was actually, ironically, before, it was a American Family Safety based in Toronto, and we were helping primarily Americans prepare for disasters, and we were doing it through. I used to be part of DECA, which is basically like a business club. You do these case competitions, you travel around to them. I'm a huge nerd. And we always used to do fundraisers. And I'm like, well, here's a better way. We can actually help communities and help families. And so it's like, I find stuff like that. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always kind of making the opportunities for myself. But I always ask myself, are we just extracting money from people, or are we giving something back? Like, that's the active ingredient for me. I want to make people's lives better. I want to be of service. And I believe that if you do right by other people, you will do well.
That statement, are we just extracting money from people or making their lives better? I feel like often we can say things and our actions don't always align with that. And it's so interesting that I don't know the dynamics of your father's business and the potential for you to carry it on. One of the largest Merrill Lynch. I mean, it seems like an inviting opportunity. Yet there's this desire in you, I'm hearing, to go and start this safety equipment company that you can see this tangible impact. And you're really living up to this idea of, not saying that the Merrill Lynch business was extracting money from people without making their lives better, but it seems like you had to go on your own path to figure out how you can do that.
Yeah, no, just to be clear, Merrill Lynch was at the time, it was pretty much the best brokerage.
Yeah.
People aspired to be part
Yeah.
of Merrill. It was not a Merrill specific story. It was really just that this applied to all investment advisors at the time. Like, I do think now we're starting to see a bit of pickup and a bit of shift, but this is going back to the turn of the millennium, right? Like, not to date myself, but I'm
Mhm.
clearly I've clearly been around a little while.
Yeah. I just do you recall at the time that decision you made, was it a difficult one to not follow in your father's footsteps at the time?
A little bit, right? You kind of think about like, okay, here's a real rolling start. Like my father taught me everything he knew about the business, and that's where a lot of my values came from. I mean, he highlighted for me, you can make a lot of money in this business, by being unscrupulous. Like doing the right thing for clients is not the most profitable path. Like selling them stuff, charging high fees, hidden fees, it was a different kind of, it was mostly commission structure back then, turning over accounts. Like this was the kind of crap that passed for, they didn't even call it advice. I don't think it was like money management or whatever was the
Hmm.
term back then. Um, and the guys that were kind of at the top of the production list, in the sales force. Some of them were there because they were just great with people, and they were great rainmakers and great at actually playing a positive role in people's lives. And there were people that were there because they just knew how to work the system, right? And that really spoke to me, like the idea that, oh boy, I'm just realizing this about myself. This is probably where it came from. Is like that idea that like there is a high road that you can take and you can still do really well. Like my dad, we had a life, and I'm very grateful for the start that I had in life because of that. But I really respected that he did it with integrity.
Mm. Yeah, especially when there is a opportunity to do it not integrity. I think anyone in this industry has seen the person go across stage getting their ring or their award who we know that they didn't take the same advice of not extracting money from people without making their lives better. But that high road you speak of, it seems like that perhaps these lessons that your father has taught you is this thread line that has perhaps been a part of you finding positive psychology. So, as we look at your journey, you go and do the safety company, you, you find your way back in the financial planning or wealth management space, but this time, perhaps, I guess, with a plan, with an idea of how you can really, to use your words, make people's lives better.
Yes and no. So it started out 2006. So we'd got venture capital involved in the safety equipment company, and sort of we got it to a point where it made sense to exit that business. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't wildly successful. So I still needed to work.
Mhm.
And it was my father again that had introduced me to my original founding partner, and still at Q Wealth, Larry Berman. And Larry shared with me this vision that he had, that the banks kind of weren't there yet. He was the chief technical strategist at CIBC World Markets, and he had this idea like ETFs are going to be the next big thing. They're going to be better for clients because they're going to.
I lost, I lost your audio.
Sorry, did
Back.
you lose me?
Yeah,
Okay, that's my fault. Just a
that's all right.
second. Okay, that won't happen again. So Larry says, okay, well, ETFs are going to change the industry. They're going to lower cost. They're much lower cost than mutual funds. They're exchange traded. Like this is the next big thing. And I thought, okay, I will help. So and he had never been in business for himself, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. So this is the pairing, right? Is I'm going to help him set up the business and kind of do everything except the investments. He's going to be the CIO. That's the partnership. Go, right? And I said I'll do this for 5 years because it has that essential component. This is going to make things better for people. And Larry and I shared that value of it's got to make it better for the client, right? I love that. So, okay, I'm back in the financial industry, but with a mission, 5-year mission to set up this ETF strategist. 2000 end of 2006. So by the time we got registered and got our first offering to market, it's late 2007. That is not a great time for a startup wealth management company. So we had to do a little bit of a pivot, surviving the financial crisis, and the business looked a little bit different, and it extended the runway a little bit. But then a couple interesting things happened, right? Post financial crisis, you see Betterment and Wealthfront, the first robo advisors emerging in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's this existential, I guess, for investment advisors, like when the internet became a thing and people were starting to buy stocks online, they didn't need the access of the wirehouses and brokerages to be able to buy stocks. The speculation was robo-advisors are going to make human advisors irrelevant, which I didn't believe at the time. I'm like, this is cool, right? But like just like online trading, advisors just were able to go from paper to doing things on their computers, made the business more efficient. It didn't get rid of the human advisor. It just allowed them to do more. And I'm like, well, I think that robo advisors, my hypothesis was, will not get rid of human advisors. They will just be a platform for human advisors to stand on. And that's what turned out to happen. But we didn't get robo advisors in Canada for years. It was 2014 before Wealthsimple just tried to go for it here. And we still don't have technically a robo
Mm-hmm.
advisor in Canada. But what it did do was really kick off the modern age of fintech. It's not like we didn't have software prior to that, but it really set off, what feels like 10 years later has been an arms race for wealth management firms to modernize themselves. And in that, and if you see our office here, when people come in, it looks like a tech company. That's what everyone
Mm-hmm.
says, right? Because there's, graffiti on the windows and exposed ceilings and stuff like that. And that's exactly, what we wanted to do, because I reimagined the company as, we're going to put a few things together. No one is doing an RIA platform. Like, we're going to conferences in the US and we're seeing this independent RIA movement, and it's not here in Canada. It's like maybe you go to an independent dealer, but that's it. And we had a portfolio management firm, which some said is the equivalent of the Canadian RIA, but it's completely different. There's a lot of barriers here. And we were already structured as a partnership. So we started thinking, okay, like, we're putting things together now. Let's reinvent the company as a fintech. Let's try to bring the closest thing to an RIA platform to Canada, because it's very expensive, very time consuming, and a huge distraction from being an advisor to run this business. And I know that because when I went from knowing everything about the retail side of the business to being on this side, the operating side of the business, I felt like a total idiot for the first 6 months. I mean, it was a whole other set of acronyms. Like, I thought, it's everything is acronyms in this business.
Yeah.
Like, I know nothing. Right. And, 18 years later, what you have to do to run an independent firm here in Canada, it's embarrassingly easy to start an independent RIA compared to here. So we really needed an answer to that. We needed an answer to, some more fintech in the business. And then, of course, there was positive psychology that was kicking around in the back of my head. And those are the three big trends that have led us to what is now Q Wealth Partners today.
Thank you for that. So many different angles that my mind is thinking about where to take this. But I heard you say maybe 2 or 3 times reinvent yourself through that story.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end it with the positive psychology and coming to Q Wealth, which is perhaps another reinventing. And then I can't help but think the link back to your father at 40 years old, reinventing himself as a financial planner. And it seems like there's this curiosity perhaps inside of yourself that maybe it's the mission to not just extract money, but help people or make their lives better, but this ability for you to reinvent yourself. So when you look at Q Wealth today of what are we, June 2024, after these iterations of reinventions, what are you most proud of when you look at who Q Wealth is today?
Boy, it's hard for me because I'm very future oriented. So I don't often sit back and pat myself on the back. The thing I'm most proud of, because first of all, it's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
The team here, the head office team is something like 60 people. I think we just added 2, so we might be more than that. It's growing quickly, and everything that we've accomplished, really, it's the people. So I think I'm most proud of the incredible talent that we've assembled here and what we've been able to accomplish together. That the company has this partnership structure So it's almost like a law firm or accounting firm. Like as a lawyer, you don't want to set up your own law firm. I mean, some people do, but it's easier to join a major firm that has all of the resources and just go and be a partner. And we've attracted now 22 platform partners who are advisors at some of the biggest dealers and biggest banks in Canada that they all believe in the same values and the same direction of the industry, and they've come to join us. Everyone who works at Q Wealth at head office is an owner in the company, right? So we are all truly partners working together towards this common goal of not just reinventing ourselves, but reinventing the industry, reinventing the client experience, and hopefully, I mean, what really gets me up on Monday morning is the hope that by the end of the week we're going to be further along this mission of trying to like bring an experience to clients that is truly transformative.
You know, you've used the words "we partners" so much, and your answer about the team is what you're proud of. I can't help but think about the study of positive psychology, and especially around a good life or living a life full of well-being. There aren't too many papers that don't suggest a component of social interactions, connections that you have. And it really seems like you're fostering this, not just like with your financial advice planning with your partners, but also the head office, giving your employees a place where they're considered a partner and not just an employee trying to maximize your profits. Can you speak to going back to that 2011, I think you said, conference in Orlando? How, if anything at all, did your framework around building businesses change?
Whew. I don't know that that's the kind of thing that just changes overnight.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that conference in particular was a seminal moment. I mean, it was certainly exciting to go down there and, actively looking for who else is doing this. Yeah, it's like going to Mars, right? You kind of hope you're going to find life on Mars, but like if there isn't, it's still pretty cool. You're still on Mars.
Hmm.
But so we get there and there's really nobody. There was really, it broke down into three areas, right? Lots of people in education, lots of people in corporate consulting, because like that's where the money is with positive psychology, and healthcare. And it turns out, I mean, there's a lot of crossover between what we've learned from the field of healthcare and adherence to advice. And I guess I'm getting off the subject. I don't know it's embedded in everything and every decision that we've made, that I've made or we've made over the years. When you get a bunch of people together that kind of believe in a greater good, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like in the PERMA formula, R is the biggest one, right? And the pretty much the only worthwhile science that predates the dawn of positive psychology is the Harvard study on adult development, right? It goes
Hmm.
back 85 years or something, and that was the singular most important finding: is relationships are it. Like if you want to move the needle on life satisfaction, that's it. I mean, we've all had this experience. Doing stuff with other people is more fun. Going to a concert, going on a trip, sharing it with your friends, with your family versus solo, right? Like that's the quintessential human experience, is doing meaningful stuff with other people. That's what we're doing here, and that's why every day is a good day.
You bring up that Harvard study, and I think it's really humbling to know that after 85 years, consistently the reporting from these participants is, to your point, being with others, relationships matter. And yet I feel like the financial industry at times, I'm not saying everybody, we can really create this almost feeling of isolation of like, oh, you don't have enough money. And again, I know we need certain amounts of money, but the industry has this tendency towards this scarcity mindset. Like you don't have enough
Mhm.
money. Look at this graph. Like here's your financial planning graph. Come sit down with me. It's red. Like the person's 32 and they're saying at 65, it's pure red. It just evokes this feeling of, oh no, I got to start working, which you may, but what I really appreciate at your approach is that you're not just talking about goals based investing. I know you said you see it now on billboards. I have a tendency to feel that sometimes those are lip service. When you poke around the work you're doing at your company, you can see that you mean it, and having an example of your employees as a partner is evidence of that. My question then is, how have you noticed yourself, and I'm not looking at one moment, just over the evolution, how have you started changing your thinking, if anything at all, from this, like, if it was there at once, like, oh, this more scarcity mindset around money to this more open, abundant way of thinking?
Yeah, good question. I think this also goes back to, yeah, like most things, right? I know you're into money scripts and understanding people's money stories. So it goes back to probably around the time my father was switching into this business. I mean, I won't kind of cover off all the backstory. He was really successful back he emigrated from South Africa, the first person in our whole family to come to Canada. I was the first person in my family born in Canada, and he had to start again at age 40. And so, and I think my mom had grown up not with as much affluence as my father, and so they both had, because of circumstances and because of upbringing, a bit of a scarcity mindset about money. I remember a few things from childhood, things that, like, I have young kids, right? And sometimes I wonder, what are the values that we're teaching them? Uh, I remember the trade-offs that we would have to make, and just how different it is for my kids growing up today. And that leads to a conservatism that is not necessarily like a well-adapted behavior for an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Because another thing, I mean, so my dad, just having been an entrepreneur his whole life, would say things like, it takes money to make money. But then, because of the circumstances, would be very conservative, with investing in his own business, and making sure that he saved diligently. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're well advised to just go for it. And that involves having kind of an abundance mindset about money, the idea that money is a renewable resource. And when you invest money, you have more money. So that's always the answer, is reinvest. And that's exactly what we've done with Q Wealth. The joke is, if we were to go back and you were to tell us how much it was going to cost us to build this thing, and how long it was, how much sacrifice it was going to take, we probably wouldn't have done it. But I'm glad that we did, because here we are. Some would say a leader in this industry, and it feels really good.
I'm always so fascinated by money stories and just our experience with money, especially from whomever we grew up with in our households, cultures, neighborhoods. You could see so many different through lines, this reinventing, but I didn't know your father immigrated. And, of course, my family immigrated from Ukraine. So there was a very similar mentality to hold on to your money. And you could see it all coming into play. I just appreciate this. I won't say end product, this current product, a Q Wealth. When you say a leader, I would definitely think you're being a leader. You know what? I'm sorry I don't have the exact saying, but you're right on your website. It's where money meets meaning, right?
Mm, that's right.
And to me, that's a stamp of, hey, we're not here just going to make you money. This is where money meets meaning. Can you just speak to, was that a significant moment to actually publish that on your website? I don't know if I've seen many other financial planning firms have that.
It was a long time coming. I mean, we've really struggled with, what should our website be? Is it speaking to why advisors join Q Wealth Partners? Is it speaking to the end client? But this is one of those things that I think this industry has got to think a little bit more about, how to serve all people. And what I like about positive psychology is, it transcends gender, it transcends race, it transcends everything. Like, it is the quintessential experience of being human. And it's so exciting that there's this science, and it is evidence based now. That's the difference
Mhm.
between Tony Robbins in the 80s and modern positive psychology, is everything is evidence based. Um, and money tends to be very quantitative, right? So we now have an evidence-based scientific approach to the qualitative side of wealth, which is what's the money for? Which is money is not actually our most valuable asset. It's not even necessarily our most scarce asset because you can make more money, you can invest, you can earn more money, you can start a business, you can earn more money. Time
Hmm.
is the one thing. You can buy it back, but the hourglass is, you know, like it only goes in one direction. So that is in fact our most powerful asset. And energy too, right? Because we only have so much willpower when we wake up in the morning. We only have so much capacity for, whether it's the number of relationships we keep in our head or, just what we have to give of ourselves to others. So we thinking across all three of those asset classes and what I'm really passionate about is that's how we serve people, right, is just maximizing their time on this earth, by being intentional about how those assets get used.
Again, I mentioned how you seemed to be a guy who's doing what you say and going back to that, not just extracting money. And your answer just speaks volumes to that. Last week, I had researcher Jordi Quadback. He's in Barcelona. He's done research with Liz Dunn. And he talked about how one of their working papers, they're studying real time through an app, like how are you feeling? They report how they're feeling. Wealthy individuals from an income perspective and not as wealthy, so lower, considering low income. And it was interesting throughout the beginning of the month. This was in Europe, and he said paydays are usually just on the first. For the first 3 quarters of the month, the reports of experiences in the moment of happiness were relatively similar. And then when it got down to the end of the month, where the lower income individuals start to run out of money, their stress increased.
Mm-hmm.
And the findings are really reporting that, yeah, money is really good at buffering against stressful moments and from this feeling of angst. But when it's not used, I guess, in areas that give you, to your point, the time and meaning, it doesn't bring as much happiness and meaning as we once thought. And why I'm saying this, I think it's so wonderful that you guys are starting to have this conversation about how do we bring meaning to the dollars. How I rambled because I really like what you're doing. How have your partners, so the financial planning firms that come on board, how are they adopting this? And maybe can you just speak about, I guess, their excitement to take this leadership knowledge that you're bringing forth and them actually implementing it?
Boy, you said a lot of stuff there.
I said so much, and I'm getting excited, and I know not to ask 79 questions, but I did. So whatever want piece of that, go.
Oh, there's a bunch of things to. Let's try to go in like a linear order. So I'm a big fan of Liz Dunn's research. I actually met her at the third IPA conference that I went to in Vancouver, and she lives there. So she was super generous with her time. We had a coffee. We talked about, how to incorporate her work more into what we're doing here. It's super interesting, that whole idea of what's enough, right? And what is the benefit of more, like more money.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it's such a powerful finding, right? Is that money can help us remove stressors, but then you kind of hit this happiness ceiling, if you will. And I don't know whose quote this is. This is another one that my dad used to say, like the mind can make a heaven out of hell and a hell out of heaven.
Hmm.
And that, because that's that effect, right? Is you see, I've always found this business interesting because you work with the people that have, when you're starting out, or even just most of us don't never get there. Like the wealthiest clients that we work with have so much money, but yet you see these weird maladaptive behaviors, or they're not getting rid of the stuff that doesn't serve them anymore, right? We've all seen it, right? Clients, they've got more money than they're ever going to need. They're going to give it away, right? Because you can't take it with you when you go,
Mm-hmm.
but they can't bring themselves to use it, even a fraction of it, while they're still alive, because they've got this scarcity mindset or this fear of running out of money. And then you've got people that uh, you know, like spend money like water trying to chase happiness, right? They're always trying to buy more happiness. And that's, the hedonic treadmill, right? Like that is not a path to life satisfaction. And it's so cool that we understand this stuff. So I think you asked something about, the other partners and advisors and even I think some of our staff. Um, everyone that's here, and Q Wealth is a bit of a private members club. Like you have to meet the partners, you have to be voted in. We only want people in our community that believe the same things, right? Like they're not just here because the money is the last thing it's mirrored in our process. Money is the last thing that we talk about, right? And sometimes the first conversation with advisors, like, how much will you pay me to join? We're like, this is not going to work out,
Yeah.
right? But the surprise is if you stay all the way to the end, this is the best place to be. But you have to believe first. We won't even show you the economics unless we believe you're one of us. And so I think it's pretty cool that all of the partners have joined because in some way, this shift that's going on in the business resonates with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're here and not at there's a bunch of independent dealers, right?
Mm. That must make you so happy when they sign on.
Well, it's good, right? I mean, we needed a certain amount of growth to get to scale,
Yeah.
but now
Yeah.
we're there, right? And
Yeah.
and it's about, it's just about working with great people. We once took, and it was early days, and I knew it was a mistake, but we took the wrong partner. And I would see this guy's name flash on my screen, like in an email in Outlook or something, and it would like stress me out. And that was confirmation, right? We upped the due diligence process. We created this whole elaborate, screening process so that would never ever happen again. I mean, I knew it was a mistake at the time, and I won't get into why we did it, but we did it, and it just was confirmation. Like we only want to work with the right kind of people. The partnership is limited to 99 advisory teams ever. We do not
Mm.
want to be a dealer that's got hundreds, even thousands of advisors. Like we're creating something, it's not about exclusive. We're creating something that's intentionally limited.
Mm-hmm.
We only want to work with the best advisors. And yeah, so when we find one, somebody that belongs in our tribe, like, yeah, that's a great feeling. It's a great
Mm-hmm.
feeling that they're joining for the right reasons. It's a great feeling that they invest so much time. We go and see them. They come to Toronto. They meet the other partners. We they've got to invest so much of themselves in the process, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
when we kind of turn over that last card and they're like, wow, and this is actually, pretty much the best thing going, financially as well, that's a great feeling. But we're already there. Like we already
Mm-hmm.
know it's going to happen if they make it to that point in the process.
I can't help but think your leadership lens on this process for picking partners. I can't help but think of a hockey coach. I am a big hockey player. I'm in Edmonton. Oilers are in the Stanley Cup Finals right now. But I've heard one of the coaches that I really like talk about his players, and he has a very similar approach. He's like, I'll look at your stats, but talk to me. Let's talk. Let's see if our philosophies meet. And he says, I want to be able to look at that person without asking and be like, when push comes to shove, can I win a Stanley Cup with you? And he's like, it's interesting how throughout that process of just meeting, you know if you can or not. And I just appreciate your lens on how to build a team. It goes back to that original conversation where it's not led by the money. Still on this, you're a man of your words. Maybe that's the title of this podcast. So I want to transition into how you see, as you keep reinventing, financial planning and positive psychology fit in. We talked a little bit of Liz Dunn's research. Are there any other principles or models that you see through positive psychology that have quite you feel a good application to embed in the financial planning process?
Well, okay, I'm going to unpack that because that question, you could interpret that a couple ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Elizabeth Dunn, definitely an important name in the field. Like I think if you're asking about other names that I think are inspirational, I mean, I consider myself fortunate to have actually met some of these people and seen them speak. I met Marty Seligman. I mean, he's been at multiple conferences, but I actually got to talk to him and just express like just gratitude. The guy's 81 years old and he's
Mhm.
sharp as anything. He's on boards. He's helping start more ventures and stuff. He's writing books, and I just wanted to tell him like what an impact it's had on my life and on this whole industry. And this isn't what you asked, but I find it so fascinating. When you go to these conferences, it's academics there, and they have no idea what's happening on the practitioner side of things. And the practitioners, even somebody like Jordan Hutchinson, he's got a PhD in flow. Never met Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and I saw him
Mhm.
speak before he passed away. He in Montreal in 2017. I saw Ed Diener speak, and he passed away also in 2021. It's really cool to have seen some of these giants in the field, while they were still with us. And I mean, it goes on, Ben Tel Shahar, Barbara Fredrickson, Carol Dweck, like all of these things are like layered together to create. And I love how collaborative the positive psychology field is. And I feel like that's what's happening now. It's kind of crossed over from the academic world to this world of practitioners. Now there's a whole crop of new people. The very first person I ever met was later in the year in 2015, after the first IPA conference. I was introduced to Moira Summers, who I believe you've had on the show.
Mhm.
And Moira is absolutely brilliant, and I couldn't believe her website is like mind, money, and meaning, right? Like it's like wow, like here's somebody that's they're doing it right, and she's got a PhD in neuropsychology, and like she's really doing it. That was super exciting. It was like wow, like that was the we're not alone. Like there's others out there like us moment for me. But then it seems like it's just accelerated, right? I mean, we just hung out at the second shift conference, and the first shift conference was like wow, here's all of these other people. The first future proof conference, Penny Phillips introduced me to Brian Portnoy, and it was like we had known each other forever because Brian had been on this journey too of being in this business. Like, I mean, he went deep down the rabbit hole, right? He's got a PhD and a CFA. He was managing money for a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, and he was like, "Hey, I want to like stop doing that, stop making millions, and just like start a company that brings this to people, like brings this, positive psychology applied to wealth." And so that was an incredible moment for me. I will never forget meeting Brian for the first time. And then, Daniel Crosby and Megan Lertz, and like the list goes on. I mean, Shift feels like it's like family. Like whether or not you've met each other before, when you meet somebody there, it could be like Ashley Kwame or Samantha Russell's not so much on the positive psychology, but these people that like, are in our industry and helping, bring about like this modern generation of advisors that's really embracing this stuff. I think it's so exciting that we're seeing it being applied now.
Mhm.
What was your
As you're
original question though? I
I,
took us like
I don't
way
know,
off
but that's
the
okay.
course there.
'Cause I appreciate that. As you're answering, or as you were answering the question that I forget what the question was, your entire body language shifted in, and I could just sense the energy you have towards this movement. Earlier, you said you're future orientated. Let's imagine we're 10 years down the road. Now, 5 years. Things move fast. 5 years down the road. What do you hope has happened in our industry with this, like this marriage that's happening between positive psychology and money?
Yeah, I mean, we have within Q Wealth, I call it like an R&D lab or like a test kitchen. And so it's called U Potential. And what we're trying to do is solve for the next, or maybe it's the last, I hope it's the last mile to actually making this like a day-to-day reality for Canadians, or just or humans that are engaging with our industry. The last mile seems to be this. So there's great education, there are great podcasts, there are great books, courses you can take, like Shaping Wealth stuff is amazing, and you see others like jumping into the fray as well. Um, I did the BTBA program, the flagship Shaping Wealth program, and now there's an alumni of hundreds of people that have been through this, and we go to conferences and we talk, and like the gap now is like kind of like clients adhering to advice. There's this intention action gap,
Mhm.
and it exists with advisors as well. So like here's where it's at. You can meet somebody that absolutely believes like you and I believe that this is, the greatest good that we can do for our clients. But the challenge is how to actually implement this stuff in practice. So there's a ton of knowledge, right? It's like drinking from the fire hose. And how do we actually deliver that in practice with the client? And there's an additional problem, which is clients don't expect it. And talking to people that are trying to implement in their practice, and some of these chats that I've been, it's a privilege to be able to talk to people that are innovating and trying new things. Everyone seems to be backdooring this into the process. Like they're layering it into their existing client conversations. Maybe like Ross Marino says he does a rediscovery meeting with clients, right? Most people are pretty open to it, right? Like anecdotally, I'm going to say it's 70-30. So if you're an advisor and you're thinking you'd like to do this, but like you're not sure what the client reaction is going to be, I mean, Sean, you probably see this all the time. Like it's overwhelmingly positive, but sometimes we're afraid. Like we're afraid, because it's taking us out of our comfort zone. Advisors have to develop like a comfort level with how to integrate it into their process, but that's tough, right? Because there's not like a CRM system or a set of workflows or like a, like a practice management program that gives you the paint by numbers of how to implement this in your business, that gives you the technology. And that's part of what we're trying to do here, is give you the technology to help action it in your business. So it's bridging that gap, but it's also what we're trying to do with You Potential is get clients to expect the unexpected. I actually believe that in the future, and there's some great research from Fidelity. Um, it's either from last year or 2022. So it's a report on Gen Y and Gen Z, and like what are the differences between them and the baby boomer generation, which, that's the majority of wealth right now is with boomers, right? So I think it's also important to understand like where's the puck going. When I think 10 years from now, and it's a rolling 10 years at Q Wealth, I think about the how different the client's going to be, right? Because two things are going to happen. One is wealth transfer is going to happen, just from survivorship, right? Women are going to control the majority of wealth very soon. As a matter of fact, it might have been yesterday. You know what I mean? Like we are
Mhm.
right there. 51.2% of Q Wealth's clients are female. So I
Mhm.
remember that moment where I first saw that data, right? Our COO was scrolling through some stuff. I'm like, wait, go back there, right? Okay. So there's difference number one. And there's so much research about the financial industry gets it wrong for women. We try to make people care about Sharpe ratio and beating the benchmark. And like, it's not that we get it wrong for women. We get it wrong for everyone, right? Like women are probably a little bit more attuned to like how weird it is to be talking about beating the market when like we haven't even discussed like what's the money for. But at the same time, Gen Y and Gen Z, it's the same sort of view on things, right? Is like, well, how is this helping me live a better life today? Retirement is broken. Like we have some responsibility between the insurance. If you're insurance licensed and you're an advisor, a wealth advisor, like we have an obligation to undo the damage we've done by selling this like dream of retirement, like sacrifice until you're 65 and then retire and then you'll be happy. I mean, like, like that's Sean Acker's TED talk is like, no,
Mhm.
don't do that because you won't be magically happy when you cross this theoretical finish line. So like we've got to start thinking about wealth management as not just like how do we help you accumulate for the future, not even like how do we help you accomplish your goals, because there's another problem of like people don't know what their goals are. So part of what we need to do is bring process to people and help them explore like themselves, their own story, their own intrinsic motivations, their personality, their psychology, how that interplays with their spouse, with their family, with values, um, to help make clear like what are goals at any given time, and they're going to constantly shift, right? So this is much more transitioning to a kind of a coaching based practice, and that aligns exactly with the Fidelity survey findings, is that the vast majority of millennials and Gen Z, they want that coaching component. They want somebody to be that accountability partner, to challenge them, to help them start doing the things that we identify together that they need to start doing to like have the life that they want to live, and even to stop doing the things that we've identified they got to stop doing in order to make space for those things. That to me is the future. And so if we were to fast forward 10 years from now, when we have hybrid fee models that are accessible to everybody, and and you ask somebody like, what are you paying for? They are not going to say, I'm paying for money management or for anything to do with investments. They will actually value the transform experience of working with an advisor that understands these things and has it represented in their practice.
I'm not just saying this. I feel like that I got goosebumps listening to you there. Like encapsulate much of the thinking that I've had over the last 5 years. You just saying like not just this idea of retiring at 65, then be happy. Your words were a better life today. Much of the, I guess, the narrative in this industry is, you got to save. And then when you're 65, you can be happy. Accessible to everyone, you said. I think this is a constant issue that we have in the industry is who gets financial planning. Do you have to have X amount? And I know there's a business side to it. However, I just appreciate how you're talking about accessible for everyone, were your words. And then what are you paying for? I think I just agree so much with you, is that this vision that you have is one day I'm realizing that I'm not paying for just the investment management, this idea to facilitate a good life. It's transformative. And I read something online how you're really advocating for advisors to look at the EQ and not just the IQ. And I hear that coming into your answer here.
Yeah, I mean it goes both ways. It's the client and the advisor. Sorry, I think I cut you off.
No. I'm looking at the time here. I didn't even, I want to respect your time. I have much to ask. However, I'm going to respect your time here. And I want to ask you a question that I ask everybody. But before that, you drove out to Blue Mountain. You bought Sean Anker's book. One of the quotes from there I really like is how we're pushing the cognitive goalpost down the horizon each time you get there. But you get this book, this orange book. You weren't a father then, but now you're a father, and you've talked about time and meaning. How has, if anything at all, being a father influenced this way of thinking of yours?
Oh man, wow. You're bringing up the I can go so many directions with that, but this is probably the most impactful one. So just before her third birthday, my older daughter, she's 11 now, she was diagnosed with leukemia.
Hmm.
And there was, I don't know how long it was, a day or two, where we just knew she had cancer. We didn't know what it was, right? And that is the most horrific moment I think you can have as a parent. Like the desire to like change places. Like if I could take that out of her and put it in me, right, so that she'll live. And then as they kind of did all the tests and figured out what she had. It was leukemia, ALL type B. The genetics were kind of favorable, so they said, well, she's got I don't know if it was a 93 or 95% chance of making a full recovery. And in that moment, I felt gratitude, just gratitude. And my wife, who is just unbelievable. I mean, she got us through it. She got her through it. So I can't say enough about what an incredible human being my wife is. But she heard the opposite. She heard there's a 7% chance that she's going to die, and the road ahead is going to be 2.5 years of hell. But all I could think was, she has a real chance, and and how incredibly grateful I was for that. And I think to this day, the difference, and the next few years were so hard for my wife. She had PTSD from it, um, you know, just so hard on a mother. But I actually believe that my background in positive psychology and all the books that I had read somehow like galvanized me against the most stressful situation I think anyone could face. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's life changing.
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. As a father, I can't imagine how difficult that would be. So thanks for sharing that, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's how we make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. It, you know, Barbara Fredrickson, you mentioned her earlier. She talks about this broaden and build theory where you have these positive experiences or these positive events that build up this resilient bank account so that when tough times come, you can draw from them. And your story made me think of that. Well, Jared, the last question I've asked 190 some people on the podcast so far is, let's imagine you yourself, you're at end of life, however old that is, that's how old you are. You find yourself sitting on a front porch, looking out at a view that brings you complete peace, ease, and contentment. And you decide to bring out a notebook to write your children's children a message on what you learned is a key to have a happy and healthy relationship with money. What would be a theme to that letter?
Wow. I don't know. You could go in a lot of directions with that. I guess it's, whatever version of the PERMA formula we have at the time, right? It's use it. It's like a lens. It's like a prism, right? Like it brings into focus like what is money for? Money is a tool. P.T. Barnum, I think, has this quote, right? Like money is an excellent servant, but a terrible master.
Hmm.
And so live a life where money serves you and you use it along with your time, along with your energy, intentionally, and invest it in the things that matter, right? Which is mainly just relationships.
Thank you so much, Jared. I appreciate all the insight that you shared with us today. For listeners listening who want to find out more about yourself and Q Wealth, where would you point them towards?
Qwealth.com.
Mm-hmm. I'll include all of that in the show notes, your LinkedIn profile and qwealth.com. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Sean. It's been a blast.